Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we're going to talk about what to do when we find ourselves in a non-awesome reality and what are our options. So one of the biggest things that you realize, the more you raise your energetic vibration, is things that don't work anymore. Things that you tolerated, things that you let slide, different things that you did in realities that no longer feel right. And I did a video a couple weeks ago about when you feel kind of pushed or you feel squished because you're kind of getting forced back into a realities after you kind of let me start a little bit backwards on that one. When you have a big consciousness expansion, a lot of people think, oh, I had this big expansion, I'm done. It's just the beginning. You have this big expansion, a big consciousness expansion, and then you kind of get squished back down in your body. Now, you have to get the body's vibration. You have to embody that frequency. You have to embody that consciousness. You have to get the body's vibration up to the frequency of that consciousness. To do that, you can no longer subject the body to realities that are not of that new frequency. And that's why when you go back and look at stuff, all of a sudden it doesn't feel right. Things are very much on your nerves. You don't like the people in the reality or the aspects of the people in the reality. The cat's visiting. They always visit when I do my videos because they know I don't like to stop. You might not like the aspects of the people in those realities anymore. It just doesn't feel right. It's on your nerves. It's not fun. A lot of people ask me, well, how do I know if a reality is not aligned? It's like, is the reality fun? If you're not having fun in the reality, if it's something that, now this can be a little tricky because sometimes we're in realities because we have a different role to play. We're clearing off karmic debt. There's a reason we're there, and it might not feel awesome at the time, but we know there's a reason we're there. But there gets to a point where we know there's no more reason we're there, and now we're just kind of holding on to it, and it doesn't fit anymore. And you're going to have a lot of clues along the way. The last video I did was about even when you don't feel like you're connected, you're still kind of connected. And the same theme's going to run through here. You're going to know if you're supposed to stay or go. And the majority of the time, I feel like when I start feeling really squished and pushed in a reality and I'm not having fun, and you start to notice how disrespectful the reality has become and how much you've tolerated, because when you're in your human consciousness, all those realities are disrespectful because the human doesn't know it doesn't respect itself. So if it doesn't respect itself, it cannot respect anyone else in these realities. It's not possible to do that. So because it can't respect anyone in these in a reality, and it can't respect itself, nothing we created was respectful. We're not respectful to people, people aren't respectful to us. And when we get back into a reality where what you're going to find happens is you go back into these realities and you're trying to live from a different aspect of yourself and not your human aspect. But then you notice nobody else is. And the whole situation just doesn't work anymore because it's so much disrespect going on and you don't know what to do. And this is when we get to that decision, what do we do when we find ourselves here? For me, most of the time, I'll be honest, I had to close out the reality. Now, we always have to close out a reality from our highest place. We can't close out a reality because we're pissed. We can't close out a reality because we're mad. We can't close out a reality because we're hurt. We have to close out a reality because we know it's served its place. It's served its course. We've gotten everything we're going to get out of it, and now it's holding us back to the next thing we have to go do. So a lot of these people, they're shooing us out of the reality because we don't belong there anymore. You're not supposed to be here anymore. You're supposed to move on to your next thing, and you need to go and do that. So they're doing us a favor, but at the time, it doesn't really feel like we're being done a favor. So look at how you feel about the reality. And if you're still upset about it, or you don't feel like you want to leave, or you feel like you're getting pushed out, and there's a difference in feeling like you're getting pushed out and looking at the reality and saying, yeah, I'm just going to go. You can kind of feel like that if you've ever been at a party where you felt like you're kind of being shooed out of the party or shooed out of anywhere really, or you just decide to go on your own. And there's a different energy to both of those realities. I've been in a lot of realities where I felt like I was not wanted somewhere, but there was a part of me that knew I had to be there. I was working through different programming, and even though I never felt welcome, I knew I had to go, and I knew I had to be there because I had contracts to fulfill there, people I had to connect with there. Even though I didn't love being there and it was a disrespectful environment, I had to tolerate it because it was highest aligned for something else I was doing. But there came a point where I knew that that was kind of over, and now I was holding on to the reality, and I didn't need to fulfill that role anymore. I didn't need to be in that place anymore. And I was letting things kind of go too long, and it was time to go. Now, when you get to the place where you go on your own, that's where you want to be, where you're completely at peace with just looking at it and saying, there was an old, I don't know if I think I've used this example before, but there was an old scene from a Buffy the Vampire episode years ago, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where one person came in and this situation was around them, and the person was like, oh, okay, let me listen to what this other person has to say and listen to this reality. That was completely distorted, but they were just sitting there listening, and the next person comes in and they look at what's going on, and they're like, oh, screw that, and they just walk out. And the other person's like, why didn't I just say screw that and walk out? So there is a balance here where you want to look at the reality, but if you are at a point where you look at it and go, yeah, this is a screw this and walk out, that's what you have to do. Now, that doesn't mean that's what you have to say. Energetically, you can feel like this is kind of a screw this reality. I'm kind of done with this, but you can still close it out from your highest place, but you have to be in that place where you can walk away from it and you have no sadness about leaving it because you kind of work through all that normally before you get to the point where you're leaving it. There are some times where we have to grieve it afterwards, but that's usually when they kind of collapse on their own. Usually the ones we just walk out of, we've kind of done the grieving already. So it depends on where you are in your process and what the reality was to you is where you're going to be on grieving it, because the human does need to grieve when you walk out of a reality. It will need to do that if it has not done that before you actually go, because we've talked about things energetically ending and then you get the physical ending. And sometimes we get the physical ending and we haven't had the energetic ending yet. So it's going to kind of depend on what you feel you need to do. But there is a part where I've been in a reality after dealing with it for a long period of time. And then I just kind of got to that, screw that, I'm leaving. And I'm just walking out. But you can do it in, the highest place you can and do it in a nice way. You don't have to actually say that, but yeah, this is not where I need to be anymore. And that's kind of how you feel. You're kind of like, I don't have to put up with this anymore. There are other realities I can go do where I'll feel like I'm supposed to be there now. But it can shift very quickly where you feel like you're supposed to be somewhere and then all of a sudden you feel like you're not anymore and then you're not sure where you're supposed to be. So in vibrational realities and all the higher dimensional realities are vibrational. They're not linear. So they change quickly. And when you think you're supposed to be one place for a while and then all of a sudden it changes, and the human doesn't like that change. Like, this was okay, now this is not okay. I wanted to go do this, now I have to go do this, and I'm not sure, which way to go. That's when you really have to connect in, because you're gonna feel what you need to do. It's whether your human's gonna resist that. And the longer the human resists that, your human consciousness resists that, the harder it's gonna be for your human to pull out of it. And it's going to feel like it takes a long time to kind of extract yourself, where you'll find a lot of times once you just kind of let all that go, the reality will it'll collapse on its own very quickly because there's nothing holding it up. None of the human realities are built on anything that's meant to last. It's all built on sand. It's not built on anything. That's why it becomes a little bit more difficult in the higher realities to build realities and build new realities, because you have to build them on the purest foundations. You have to build them in purity, and you cannot build them in any of this tainted stuff that we used to build things on. And in the beginning, it's challenging to do that. So you'll know when you have to do something. I promise you that. Now, what you have to do could change. You could feel 1 minute I'm supposed to just close the reality down and go. Sometimes that will mean talking to the people in the reality. Sometimes you won't have to. Sometimes you'll know you don't have to, because you didn't have that type of relationship with the people in the reality. It was more what it represented to you, and you don't really have to set everybody down and have a discussion about why you're going. And it's really not so much to have a discussion about it. It's just more for people to understand I gotta be careful how I say this, because if I keep putting a lot of us in it, like, I understand what I'm trying to say, then it becomes a human ego thing. you're just closing down to reality because you feel like it's not a respectful environment anymore. And that's the biggest thing. Soul respect and human respect are two different things. So if you're trying to have a conversation with someone in their human aspect about soul respect, you're not going to get very far because they don't understand what that is. They haven't lived from those aspects. Now, you can stay in the reality if you feel like there's different roles for you to still play there. But you have to really be honest with yourself if you're staying because you know you have roles to play there, or if you're staying because you still want to get something out of the reality. It's two different energies. One, you're there for the other people in the reality as a support system for something, and you'll have to decide what that is for you. Or the other, you're still trying to get something out of it. There's a want and a need there from you, and that's why you keep subjecting yourself to it. And you'll find it just gets more disrespectful the longer you try to stay, especially when it's starting to collapse. You'll have the opportunity to close it out in its highest place, but if you don't take those opportunities, it will eventually get closed out for you because you have somewhere else to be. And you have to make your mark. You can't miss your mark on the new reality. You have to be there because you have things to do there. So we will be the ones that hold ourselves up over time. You know, we are the separation across time and space. We're the reason shit takes so long because we don't want to do what we say we have to do. We want to keep playing in the old stuff. We don't want to take the big leap to the next thing. So just be very mindful of what you're doing. Be very mindful. Mindful is probably not the word I want to use. Be very conscious about what you're doing and why you're staying somewhere. And if it's not awesome, why are you there? What do you have the fear of leaving it for? What's not working in that reality? What can you do to shift it? Now, staying and not trying to shift it. Now, you will in some ways shift it with your presence. As your presence shifts, it will shift. Either become so distorted you can't stay anymore, or people will shift with you. A higher aspect of you will give a higher aspect of them. Can they hold the aspect for very long? That's normally where the rubber meets the road. You know, they have to be able to hold that aspect. Everyone has multiple aspects. Even someone living from the most human of human consciousness has higher aspects, and they can slip into them all the time. It's just not where they live from. It's not where they can make every decision from. That's when you eventually reach a spot in your consciousness where you always come from your highest place, no matter what's involved, no matter it's money, love, it doesn't matter. No matter what the situation is, no matter what your hot points were before, you're always going to come from your highest place, no matter what it is. Always. And if you haven't been able to do that yet, then you're going to kind of slip back and forth in and out of these karmic human realities until you can always make a decision from that place. That's the aspect you leave with. If you can't leave with that aspect, you don't make a choice. You don't even choose to leave a reality. Because if you're not ready to leave, you're just going to create the whole thing again because it's not energetically finished. So you have to be very conscious of what you're doing. And if you're not sure, don't make a choice. No good choices are made when you're choosing from any emotion at all. So if you have any emotion going on, don't make a choice. The universe will usually help you for a while. When you're really emotional, it'll just shut doors. Our human gets into these things where we want to break down the doors that have been closed off to us because we really want that thing. But you're going to look back and see where a lot of doors were closed off to you because it wasn't what you were supposed to do. And you'll know more later. So leaving, trying to realign it. I have found normally it's easier to start off with new people or leave for a while and see if you get new aspects of the old people than trying to shift a reality once you've outgrown it. And it's not a frequency you're enjoying, and it's not something you really place you have to be anymore. You're just staying because you kind of are familiar with it. And that's kind of a rut our human gets into because it knows it. It would rather stay there than go somewhere else. So I'm going to shut this down before it gets over 15 minutes. Okay. Keep practicing the art of intuition.